Welcome back to another episode of the Executive Code Podcast, and we're here to answer your questions in relation to personal mastery. If you want to find out more, head over to paulwilliamdaves.com, where there's more resources, and you'll be able to join our community. It's not on any social media channel. It's a standalone community itself, so you'll be more than welcome to actually join our community. And as I said, there's a lot of resources available on our website. And if you want to watch this podcast episode, you can actually head over to our YouTube channel. Again, the link is going to be in the show notes, and it's also available on our website as well. So you'll be able to watch our recording taking place live, as well as just listen to the podcast itself. If you're enjoying the podcast, let's do us a little favor. Why not give us a review or a comment on Apple iTunes? Because what it will do is it will help to actually spread the word to more and more people about this particular podcast. And our whole aim is to try and help as many people as we possibly can. I'm joined here with Nicole, and Nicole has another question for us. So what have you got for us this week, Nicole?
So, Paul, as we go through life, we inevitably have negative experiences, whether it's a bad memory or someone close to you has passed on, or you, for some reason, hold a grudge against somebody. So how can we begin to let go of the past and move forward?
Okay, cool. Because this question, or I suppose the answer to this question, is probably tied with what I discussed in our previous episode. What you want to look at, so the hardest thing for people is to actually let go of something. And what I mean by that is that if they have resentment for another person or resentment of a particular moment in their life, it's actually one of the hardest things for people to let go of. And the reason being is because they're holding on to that grudge or that resentment. And by doing so, they're actually holding on to an imbalanced view of a particular situation or of a particular individual. So if you listen to our previous episode, you'll have an understanding of what I mean by an imbalanced view. An imbalanced view is basically you're not seeing the other side. And the law of duality is that there's always two sides, or there's always both sides at the same time. So what you want to understand is that when we have a memory of a moment in our life and we perceive that memory as being negative, it's feedback for ourselves, and our unconscious will constantly, regularly bring up that moment in our life and replay that moment in order for us as feedback to deal with that moment. And by dealing with the moment means we need to own the moment and have it as an objective view, and to see what we need to learn from that moment in order for us to evolve in life. So what I mean by that is, when we have a negative moment that happens in our life, and so that it can be a traumatic period, it can be a traumatic moment, it can be something that happened to us from an event or an individual in our life, well, then we will carry that moment for the rest of our life until such time as we bring it into an objective view. And by carrying that moment in an unobjective view means we're carrying that grief or that resentment or that anger or whatever negative perceived feeling that you want to have in relation to it. We will carry that for the rest of our life until such time as we bring it to an objective state. An objective state is seeing both sides. We're seeing that moment or that individual as being negative, whereas when we start to look for where that moment has actually served us in our life and where that individual has served us in our life and what we have learned and benefited from that moment or that individual, now we're starting to bring it into more an objective view. When I'm working with clients, I bring it through a whole process in order to bring it into an objective view. So when we start to do that, now we can let go of the resentment, we can let go of the anger or any other negative feeling that we have in relation to either the moment or the individual. By doing that, now you can move forward. You can now start to evolve. The other side of it is that when we're carrying resentment about somebody, it means that there's a trait within that individual that we have a perceived negative view of. And again, as I said in previous episodes, when it's a trait that's within another individual that we're not recognizing within ourselves, we are actually lowering our own self-worth. And what people typically do without fully thinking about it is they will carry that resentment, that anger, and that negative feeling around in some cases for the whole of their life. And therefore, the only person that's actually being affected is the individual carrying around that resentment, that anger. And as science has already proved, that resentment, that anger, that stress will cause dis-ease within the body and therefore will lead to illness. So the person, all the person has to do is make a choice as regards whether they want to resolve it and get to an objective view and therefore no longer carry that trauma or that negative feeling or resentment against another individual or moment. That's a decision. And then there's a process in order to actually bring it to an objective view. And that objective view now is a neutralized view for that moment and that event. Now you've evolved and therefore you can go forward. By not recognizing that negative trait or that perceived negative trait within the individual that is within yourself, what you're now doing is you're lowering your self-worth, because now you're not owning those parts of yourself and therefore you are not whole and therefore you are reducing your own self-worth. So what you want to do is actually start to look at those traits and identify those traits within yourself. And then when you're able to identify those traits within yourself and see the benefits of those traits, now you can start to bring those traits into more of an objective view. And by doing that, now you're no longer having that resentment or carrying that resentment going forward. I've seen so many different people, whether it be relations, friends, you name it, right across the board, and acquaintances that carry, and because you can hear them talking about it, they carry that resentment about other people or different moments in their life. And there's also a podcast episode that I recorded, which was, I entitled it, "You're Not Your Story." They're the traumas that people carry around with them. That's the baggage that they carry around with them, which is literally pulling them down. So, as I said, you've got a choice. You can continue to carry the baggage around with you. You can continue to carry that resentment that you have about other people, but the only one that's being hurt is you. And until such times you take the choice to actually bring it into more an objective view, now you can actually start to evolve.
And I know resentment can also manifest in things like diseases or, psychosomatic issues later on in life because you're carrying all that stress with you around.
Yeah.
What are some actionable tips we can start taking today to bring our past into, to an objective state and resolve it?
Yeah, what you can look at is if it's to do with something from our past, let's say it's a moment from our past, start to look at how that moment served you from that moment onwards for the rest of your life. How did it benefit you from that moment, in that moment, and for the rest of your life? And what was the support that you were getting in that moment and from that moment onwards for the rest of your life? So when you start to observe that, now you're starting to bring yourself into more objective view. And the natural reaction, Nicole, that I get from clients is the immediate response is, there's no way that moment served me. I did not benefit from that moment. It didn't hurt me. It didn't help me in any shape or form. That's the natural reaction that somebody has when I ask them that question. But I keep pushing them and keep persisting from the point of view, but it did. It did serve you. And when you absolutely be honest with yourself and true to yourself, and yes, it does help to have somebody to ask those questions and to challenge you and to push you. So therefore you don't allow yourself to escape out of it, for one better word, because sometimes we want to keep ourselves safe. We want to keep ourselves attached to what is that we perceive to be true, but actually, we're actually doing more detriment to ourselves. So one of the first things is literally finding out or asking yourself or have somebody ask you in terms of how did that moment serve you in that moment and from that moment onwards for the rest of your life? What did you learn from that moment? How did it benefit you in that moment and for the rest of your life? Where did you get to support? You'll now actually start to see where that moment has actually benefited and supported you. And now you're bringing that moment into an objective view.
And I think, my belief is that there's always a reason when something happens, and when your negative experiences, it's bad, but eventually at some point in your life, it's going to help you or help others in your life. And it's not random. It's not just wasted. There's a lesson there to be learned, and it'll show up eventually. And I think Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots when you look back, right? So It's at the end of your life where you kind of look back and say, oh, this happened for this reason and this for that. So, it's hard to to see that when you're going forward in life, obviously. But at the end of your life, it'll all make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose if people don't know me and they don't know kind of my story or where I came from and all that kind of things, people's natural reactions, oh, that would be easy for anybody that hasn't gone through any traumas or anything in their life, and they've had, for one better word, a privileged life or whatever it be. If you knew me and what I went through, you'd understand that you wouldn't even be asking that question. So I'm coming from the point of view of actually dealing with an awful lot of stuff that would have happened to me literally growing up. So therefore, I'm speaking from experience is really what I'm saying. So yeah, do they happen for a reason? You'll always have the question from the perspective of, would you desire a life where things would not have had happened in your life? Yeah, that's a natural thing that you'll always have, or thought that you'll always have. But when you start to bring it into an objective view and see whether it's actually observed you, where it has actually served you, and where you benefited from it, and where it's actually where you got the support from, and all that kind of things, when you start to bring it into a more objective view, if you were to ask me, going back over some of the different things, would I rather that they didn't show up in my life? And the answer is no. Because the work that I do right now at the moment, and this is getting back to your point, Nicole, when you look back and where it's actually served you, or where there's been a reason for it, in the work that I do, it shows up literally so many different times with clients, because now I understand, or I know, not that I understand, I know what it's like for a lot of my clients in relation to what they've experienced, and therefore it makes it an awful lot, how would I say, I won't say easier, but it makes it more understandable from my client's perspective, or for me to bring them through the processes that I bring them through.
I mean, I think everyone has had, trauma at some point in their life, no matter how perfect their life looks from the outside. It's hard to understand. It's hard to understand that, especially with social media, because almost everyone posts, only the good stuff, right? No one wants to talk about like the mess and the challenges that they've had and all that. Like, I mean, when you're going through like airline pilot training, I don't really like want to post anything on social media about all the exams and all that. I might post something at the end, but when I'm all done with training and all that, but it's really hard to be vulnerable and to expose yourself to, criticism and judgment and all that when it's not something you are especially proud of. You only want to post the good stuff, right? So that people can see that you are doing well. And yeah, so
it is just so true what you've just said, Nicole. So true. Because people have this view that everybody else's life is just absolutely perfect, that they haven't gone through any traumas and they're not experiencing any difficulty whatsoever, that their life is just absolutely amazing. The answer is no. Their lives aren't amazing. So if you were to literally understand and know every single aspect of their life and see what's not shown, as you say, on social media, or not, that's not shown outside closed doors, you would probably wish and thank that you're actually living the life that you're currently living right now at the moment, and not wish to have somebody else's life. Honestly, the people I work with in all walks of life, and what I've encountered and experienced with other people in explanations of what they've divulged with me, and confidentially, is completely paramount in the clients I work with. It's I'm amazed at how people show what they show on social media, for example, and showing that one-sided view of life. And it just reinforces to me every single time that one-sided life just does not exist. So you're absolutely, you could not have said a truer word, to be honest with you, Nicole.
Yeah, and that's why it's good to not, depend so much on social media to see how a person is doing.
Will we ever get rid of social media? We don't know, but maybe we will. We don't know, but yeah, there's always both sides. There's good things about social media, and there's bad things about social media. There's always both sides. So that will give you some indication in relation to what's actually happening from that perspective in relation to resentment and so on. If you want to find out more, come on over to our website. And if you also want to find out what your life purpose is, or what direction you should be going in your life, again, head over to our website, paulwilliamdaves.com, reach out to us, and we'd be more than happy to help you. But until next time, I wish you every success.